Hello, I'm Glenn McGuinness, and welcome to Outburst. This week, digital democracy.
The dangers that exist to our democracy, particularly with respect to social media and the fake news that exists.
It's because of social media that young people like me, who usually wouldn't watch the news or go on a news website, would know about what's going on in the world.
Fake news that gets people to think that they have to vote this way.
I feel like it's pretty easy to find reliable news sources.
How vulnerable is our political system to foreign interference?
When I see things on Facebook, I'm like, well, what's your source?
Platforms such as Facebook or any other platforms will be made transparent.
Does social media help democracy? I guess so.
The digital transformation of our democracy is still in its infancy.
With the dissemination of knowledge and knowledge no longer being concentrated at the tippy top, people are now being empowered.
Does social media help democracy?
I believe it does because it helps get the word out and it helps get others' opinions out on the matter.
I think the sharing of information is very important. I don't always think that social media is the best way to go about doing it, but it definitely helps younger people get more aware. I think it helps, but I don't think it's the best way of going about it.
I think so, yeah. I feel like we're free to say whatever we want, and yeah, I don't know, we can voice our opinions, but I do know that in some countries the government does impact on what social media can be portrayed, so it depends.
Absolutely it does. It provides people a forum, it provides freedoms, it allows people to express what they think. I still think there should be regulation and consequences, and people should be responsible for what they post and what they put out there, just like you would if it was in person. But absolutely necessity.
I think that it honestly can be a bit of a help or a hindrance. It sort of depends on the person involved. Like, for example, Donald Trump, it is absolutely not a help, it's more of a hindrance.
There's a platform where everybody can share their ideas, and that's how democracy works. You share ideas, one disagree, one agree. At the end of the day, they should end up agreeing on something at least.
Exactly. I mean, they can criticize what they want and they can encourage what they want. It's a good form of expression for everyone.
It's because of social media that young people like me, who usually wouldn't watch the news or go on a news website, would know about what's going on in the world, whether it's in Montreal, Canada, worldwide, most likely in the US also. I think it makes us more informed as global citizens rather than just citizens in one nation.
I feel like it helps, but it also hurts because, you as well as the people on social media helping democracy, there's also the people who are helping, let's say, fascism or something. There's, Adam Waffen and stuff, which has their forums online.
In fact, no, I think that it may influence democracy, but not necessarily for the better.
Yes, it does, because social media promotes so much publicity, so anything you post on it is going to be seen worldwide, depending on your amount of followers. So I believe it does help.
I actually ran a campaign last year, and social media was a huge part of that. And so what we found was, again, it reached a different demographic that's usually not engaged. So I ran a campaign as a 24-year-old in the city of Vancouver. There's a whole demographic that, again, isn't usually engaged. But if you actually make them find a reason for it, you can have a great impact, like Cortez did in New York, or Bernie Sanders, and so on and so forth.
Digital democracy means to me a new form of canvassing, a new way of engaging and educating people.
I feel like politics is quite difficult to reach the youth, and digital democracy helps achieve that.
I think it means access to democracy for everybody.
Digital democracy, I think that's huge, especially today, where a lot of what we're focused on is technology, and technology is advancing, so it's really important to have your voice heard through social media platforms, and actually acknowledging that we are moving towards a very technology-based society.
technologies that shape our public sphere. How we get information, how we share information, how that information is used in our economy and is used in our democracy, for us to participate actively in our democracy.
If you look at countries in the global south, if you think about the revolutions in Egypt, social media was an important tool. It was what the general people, the general population used to get the message out there. It's what they used to organize. It's what they used to show what was happening to them. So it completely can help democracy, right?
For me, again, it's about access. I think that we are operating inside a digital ecosystem where we don't have democracy, where we have corporate monopolies that are based in Silicon Valley for the most part, who are controlling our digital lives or our digital experiences. So for me, digital democracy would be undoing that and making digital properties or digital places common and public and transparent so that they're not owned by certain corporations.
I think there is a legitimate crisis of trust in our integrity in our technology sector right now. This has to do with how companies are managed and operated on one side, but the flip of it is the effect that the companies are having on the integrity of information in our democracy itself. And that is also creating a crisis, not just in do we trust these companies and how they're operating and how the effect they're having on our lives, but do we trust the information in our democracy at all?
Are you concerned with fake news and disinformation in Canada?
Not really. It really comes down to, are you willing to look into the information you're trying to feed yourself and the information that you're trying to project out into the world, right? If you're constantly being told what to believe and what to think and what to say, that's more of a you thing than a Canada thing. So I don't blame Canada, I blame the person or the people.
Absolutely. I think it's a very important issue. It's important to have reflective and accurate information and such. I think fake news is definitely misleading and can often construe misinterpretations of reality.
Well, I am concerned about fake news because there's so much info out there already with Wikipedia leaks and everything going on. Like, you never know what kind of source is true. Like, I'm in school and just source checking is a big thing. Like, you have to check every source that you have. So it's fake news makes it harder now to know what's true and what's not.
Yes, but I think that if you read something, you just find the sources and try to figure out. I think you need to educate yourself, not just take everything at face value. And that's pretty much it. When I see things on Facebook, I'm like, well, what's your source? Tell me where you got that number from.
Yeah, I am concerned about it because we're getting fed news that people want to tell us, and then we're not able to make informed decisions with the information that we need. So it is concerning, definitely.
If one opinion greatly overcomes other opinions and it's fake, it can certainly become the truth if everybody believes in it.
I don't know if it's as bad as it is in the States, but I know that I've moved completely off of Facebook just because I see so much garbage stuff that I know is not true, and especially as an environmental scientist, I see a lot of misinformation being floated around.
I'm not concerned about it for me in particular because I have the critical faculties to tell the difference, but I'm concerned about it for other people because obviously a lot of people are buying stuff that's obviously obvious nonsense.
Not really, because I feel like I personally am pretty good at being able to tell if where the sources of something is coming from or whether it even has proper sources. But that is coming from somebody who I think is relatively well educated. So I don't know about other people.
I'd say it's a pretty big part. I think, especially in politics, whether it be federal or provincial, is we read too much into it, and we have so much false information about elections or parties that it kind of makes up our mind and puts us in a biased state.
Depends on the context. Yeah. We both come from a background of library service, so information help me out here. Information literacy is an important aspect of what we've learned a lot of it and worked a lot with. So I don't know if I would say it's a major. It's not the most pressing concern on my mind, but it is definitely a thing I think about. I don't know if that answers your question. Okay.
No, I think it's also just being concerned that people have the skills to sort of understand what news sources are reliable or trustworthy. Yeah.
Oh, very. Because there's all many different sources that it could be coming from, and you don't know which one is accurate and which one isn't right now.
Personally, I don't experience it a lot. I only go through really trusted media sources, so I don't hear a lot of the off-brand and the fake news, so to speak, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's pretty easy to find reliable news sources and common sense. You can kind of figure out what's fake and what's not.
You know, I think American-style politics are slowly creeping into Canada and have been for probably the past, I'd say 10 years, but maybe even longer than that. And I think we as consumers of information really just need to be conscious that we take in all perspectives on events.
Always, I think you have to listen critically, whoever's talking, whether it's a news channel. You can't assume that there's everybody's got spin. When you hear somebody's opinion, they're giving you a spin. You just need to be critically aware. So when you're listening to something, you just take it with a grain of salt. It's not all true, it's not all fake, but there's somewhere in between sometimes.
The term fake news is more popular now. However, there's always been this element of news that might not be so credible. What does that mean, credible? I really love teaching, particularly this age group, because I really feel that the 12 and 13-year-olds are so passionate about all of the things that we study in school. They have a really strong sense of justice, and they really get involved wholeheartedly in all of the activities that we take on here at school. What does it mean, Annie? Accurate news. Accurate news, yeah? For it to be believable, Nathan? True, yeah, these are great words. Hi, my name is Allison Sobel. I am a grade 7-8 teacher here at St. Marcellus Elementary School. So the lesson we were looking at today was dealing with fake news versus credible news, and the students had to work through a variety of news feeds and evaluate whether a story or a picture or a meme was credible or not, and either like the article or put it in the trash.
With the pluses that we got and the information from the pictures, it was way easier to identify if it was real news or fake news.
News-wise, in terms of my description of it, would be a resource for teachers to help implement a relevant media literacy program. We all know that, especially in this age group, 12 and 13, they're on their phones all the time. They're consuming media all the time, whether they realize it or not. And they really do need to have those tools to be able to say, yes, this is real, no, this is not, this is a credible source, this is not. Right, so if you see these words attached to an image, then you know that it's fake. They really love it. I think, again, because it looks really good, like it's very real looking. It doesn't look like a textbook or a photocopied sheet. They're actually on the computers working through real feeds that are developed for each lesson. And I think that it's something that gives them the opportunity to talk about what's happening in the world around them. It's very current, and they can see the value in it, and they get to express their opinions about what they're seeing in real time through these lessons.
We kind of grew up with fake news. Fake news just started being popular like right now. In their times, let's say, it wasn't popular, it wasn't really a thing. So it's normal that we know more about fake news than they do. And I think that they should learn to trust their children more, because adults tend to be more like, oh no, they're children, they don't really know what's going on. So you should tend to trust your child more.
Even the children themselves, they should tell the adults that we learned this from fake news, we learned this. So I suggest that you should do this, because it will really show you basically, even though you're on the political side too, that you should use these so you know that what you're doing is right if you're going to vote for that person.
In terms of demographics, I think that this generation is really good at doing that because they know it exists. In terms of an older demographic, I think there's still some learning that has to take place there about just because it's news doesn't mean it's credible, particularly online. We all know that in social media applications, you're really only getting something that's tailored to your personal tastes, and we do talk about that in this class a lot too, is that idea of curated media. So something that's made just for you, is that a pro or a con? I mean, it could go either way. But I think really I've seen a shift in the last couple of years away from sort of just taking everything that comes at you through these social media applications and people are more aware of the fact now that they do play a part in it, and it is a consumption on their end, that there is an active role that you as the consumer of that media can play in discerning whether it's real or fake.
I feel like social media should not be the place where we talk about our politics. It should be in person in real life, because on social media, that's where everybody from around the world can just say it and hate on it. Whereas in real life, you can say it and others can talk bad, but they can't say it that hurtfully, rather than someone you don't know, or someone you don't know what they look like, you don't know who they are, you don't know where they're from, and they're just speaking bad about you when they don't know you. Whereas someone who personally knows you because you're speaking to them, if they say something to you, you'll really think about it.
We don't want to be fooled. We don't want to be fools. We don't want to be fooled. So now you have something that you can actually use. Did any of it take very long? Like to check one of these things? Did any of that take more than 30 seconds to double check? No, so if it only takes 30 seconds, why wouldn't you? The information is in the palm of their hands. They can look up any information that they need to know. What my role is as a teacher is to really help students to become competent with 21st century learning skills like collaboration, critical thinking, inquiry, problem solving, and really to highlight for them that it's important for them to be thinking about these things. They can't just be the takers of the information, that they do have some power, even though they're subject to looking at it all the time, they actually do have some say in how they consume that media.
Should social media influencers be paid by the government to spread information?
Well, I think they should just stay as an independent platform because, it's their opinions, right? So I don't think the government should intervene with that, I guess.
No, same thing as my friend says, totally independent platform.
That's a trick question. To be honest, I think if the government paid them, then it would be more, government would have influence on those influencers, while right now the social media influencer might not be affected by, let's say, big companies or the government. They're saying what they feel, and I think it's more democratic that way, while if the government paid you, you'd have a certain governmental agenda.
Not at all. That's kind of like people being paid to make advertisements and stuff, you know.
No! Social influencers? When has that been a job? No, I say no.
It all depends. It depends how they're promoting what they're promoting. If they're doing it in like a bad way, like sexually and stuff, to get more views and stuff, I don't think the government should be paying them. But if they're doing it ethically, then yes, it would be good.
I'm of two minds, because on the one hand, it's really great to see our government trying to engage in the media system as we actually use it, right? It's really great to see that the government is paying attention to how information actually spreads through social media. And these influencers, they're called influencers for a reason. They have got a lot of power, right? On the other hand, the kinds of audiences that a particular influencer might access are very limited, and they're limited in ways that we don't necessarily know about. So the risk of accidentally giving a lot of information to one specific group within the population and then completely ignoring another group is heightened. We just don't have as much information about who you can reach through those influencers because their audiences change all of the time. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Dubois. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Ottawa in the Department of Communication. There's definitely some changes, particularly for those who are really engaged and want to use social media and those kinds of tools for politics. It doesn't have a big difference if you're not, self-selecting in, but it certainly matters for those who are saying, yes, this is a new tool, I want it in my tool belt. Yeah, so in the Canadian context, our government, I think, sees the use of social media and other digital tools as a way of potentially engaging with citizens. It's also a way of understanding what citizens want and need and do, providing new services and tools, potentially providing more accessibility to information about what the government does. There's a bunch of pieces to it. And from the citizen perspective, it's often an opportunity to voice your own concerns, whether it's displeasure with a decision that's been made or excitement over something that's been made. The excitement part, I remember when the census came back, there was a whole lot of hype. It was pretty exciting. So benefits are often thought of as a reduction of barriers to entry. So people who might not physically be able to get to a protest can still engage politically from their own computer in their own home. Some of the downfalls, though, are you might lack some of the physical presence that you need to build communities. That doesn't always happen. There's certainly a lot of community building that can happen online, but some of that in-person interaction has shown to be pretty important for different groups in terms of being able to mobilize, being able to generate trust and acceptance and that kind of thing. The idea of digital democracy is becoming a more popular term. What exactly it is seems to be changing depending on who you talk to. For me, digital democracy is really about democracy in a digital context, right? Right now, we exist digitally, regardless of how much we choose to use the internet or digital tools. Everything around us is pretty digital. And so our democracy, by necessity, also is.
Public participation online.
Well, it means using high tech as a person to vote, to select candidates, things like that.
Voting through the internet, I don't know, like you're using technology to further a democratic agenda.
Perhaps making sure that everyone has a chance to maybe vote electronically.
Which of the following countries has not offered online voting? Estonia, Switzerland, or China?
China.
Maybe Estonia?
Estonia, Switzerland, or China? Not offered. China?
Switzerland.
Switzerland?
I'm gonna say China.
Absolutely right.
Okay, awesome.
Very good.
Thank you.
Estonia introduced online voting at a national level in 2007. The idea was to make voting simpler, more convenient, and increase voter turnout. Today, 30% of Estonians vote online. They use an ID card with 2 PIN numbers to access the online system. Switzerland is the most experienced country in the world when it comes to remote online voting. E-voting trials began there in 2001. Today, most voters under the age of 50 in Switzerland use e-voting. Both models, along with examples from the UK, US, and local Canadian elections, have been used as research into a national online voting system in Canada.
My name is Don Tapscott. I'm an adjunct professor at INSEAD in France, and I'm an author of 16 books, and I'm also chairman and founder of the Blockchain Research Institute. Well, I think that we have a crisis of legitimacy of our democratic institutions. Canada is actually on the good side compared to other democratic countries, but all around the world, young people are not voting. Many agree with the bumper sticker, "Don't vote," it only encourages them. Politicians are often beholden to powerful interest groups. And Exhibit A in the United States today, 95% of Americans think there should be background checks on firearms, but Congress can't pass a law reflecting the will of 95% of the Americans. And now we have a president who says, yes, democracy doesn't work. Actually, it's rigged. And the fourth estate, the free press, the foundation of freedom, is fake. So Houston, we have a problem. You know, we created a first era of democracy, which was great. Better than what existed before. We had democratic institutions, representative institutions created, but there was a weak public mandate. Citizens were inert, and there was opacity built into the system. I think in Canada and everywhere, we need to move to a second era where we have stronger representation, active citizenship, a culture of public deliberation. and where we have transparency, because sunlight is really the best disinfectant on inappropriate or unethical activities by government leaders. And naturally, I think that technology can be key to building this second era. We should have smart votes. You can have smart money. You give money to your kid who's going off to university, and the money says, sorry, I don't do bars, and I don't do weed, I only do books and tuition. The money can do that now with blockchain. We could have rich transparency where the actions of politicians are known. We could have representatives accountable to citizens through votes that are contained in a smart contract, where the representative needs to do what the citizens want. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not direct democracy. Voting every night on the evening news, that's a terrible idea. One of the things democracy is about is protecting the rights of minorities. It's not about majority rule. But it's now possible to move to a whole new era of a deeper and richer democracy. But to make that happen in Canada, we ought to have a Royal Commission on the digital age. We need a new set of rights and principles, and we need a whole new set of broad historic initiatives to move us towards a deeper and richer and more appropriate democratic society.
That's all for this episode of Outburst on the Cable Public Affairs channel. I'm Glenn McGuinness. We'll be continuing this conversation online, so don't forget to log in and share your thoughts on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. It's your turn to speak up, and we're listening.